to Mr. Richard Earnshaw. Thank you again. Sorry about that, brother. We got to pay the sponsors too.
Oh, don't worry. It gave me a chance to just have a couple of swigs on the old beer.
So people are saying, holy smoke, they're hearing you talk this technical stuff, and it's great, about swishing. And so, let's ask this question. Emotionally, if you're not feeling right, like you're on the bike and you're not feeling emotionally right, are you able to step in and start writing? Can you just turn it on? Or should I say, are you able to shut that off and, get into those modes of just being professional and writing or whatever you're doing?
I would say no, not really. What I tend to find myself doing if I'm, hitting some kind of wall, I will sort of step back from it. I might deal with some stuff like, updating all the software, make sure everything's on song, just testing a few things, the stuff that is just ticking the boxes, maintenance. I might set up some sessions that I know that are coming up that I've got to do. It's like, well, I'll just get the stems in for that, or I'll dive on. This is another thing to show. This is brilliant. So under here, that is an old G4 from, I think that's 21 years old now. I think it's 21 years old, which runs still. I've still got my old TDM Pro Tools here as well, as much as the new stuff. So there might be some old data tapes that I need to grab stems off, so I just kind of go through the process of those annoying things that are on the to-do list and just give myself some space, Sometimes I'll work on a record, like, for example, literally last week just finished a new track with Mike City. Now, believe it or not, we originally connected on this record and he did the vocals 3 years ago. I think it's about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And maybe even longer. And you get it to a certain point, and then you start to question certain things. And I was like, I'm not sure if this is where it wants to go, or I'm not sure if it's doing this. And in the end, you just have to walk away from this stuff and go, it will all come good in the end. Just for some reason, I'm still too close to the elephant, and all I can see is grey. So I'm just going to step back and just...
Do you know why I ask you this question? I'll tell you why I'm asking this question this way, and I pose it to you, about the emotion or the mundane process of running a studio and everything and maintenance. People see only what they see. It's like the goldfish in the glass bowl. Everything looks beautiful, clean, serene. The records are coming out, everything's perfect. But they don't really understand the nuts and bolts of the nitty gritty that goes on behind the scenes of dealing with, I can't deal with that right now. Damn it, I want to play this part, but I'm not feeling it. Or you played the part and you come back 2 hours later and you go, You know what I'm saying? It's just, that's not what I'm feeling. And
there's some mixes that I've done, like remix wise, over the years. The version that is heard by the consumer, the buyer, the listener, might be third, fourth generation ideas. I may have done a remix and then I've got it almost ready, and this has happened, and I come away and then I come back to it and I just think, nah. When I left this room last night, I was convinced that this vibe was on, and I come back in this morning and I'm just like, no. And I can't, there is a problem I think that most artists, producers, songwriters, musicians have, which is constantly looking for that level of perfection. I know that I've been trapped before at a point where you think, no, it's not right, it's not perfect. But then you have to then have the maturity, I suppose, is something that has become easier as I've got older, to go, I've got to draw a line under this now. This, in the year of 2020 or 2021, this record is now at the very best point I can get it. So in the
Lord's year of 2021, we're at that point where you say, I'm very happy to say it's as good as it's going to be.
Yeah, it's just recognizing when you reach that stage.
Okay, so let's step back in time. You start with, Soulfuric, and you go all the way to Duffnote. You've also come from the vinyl generation because you're an analog baby in a sense. Analog baby, grew through the whole analog thing and moved into digital. What was that like for you? Coming out of analog, vinyl, all that stuff. What was the thought to change and everything that happened for you?
Well, I mean, obviously it was extremely challenging, but when we set up the Duffnote sort of limited company, and obviously the labels affiliated with it, it was 2003. So in 2003, we were sort of getting all the rumor about iTunes in the UK. There's this thing that Apple are doing. They've got all this music. It's all digital. What's it going to do? And we were just like, well, I don't know, because it's not happened yet. But we are in the business of making music. How the music is distributed, how it's packaged, and how it's heard is at the hands of the gods, because it changes all the time. We've had vinyl, we've had cassette, we've had open reel, we've had 8-track, we've had, pirated MP3s, we've had MP4s, AACs, flat, WAV, AIFF, we've had it all. And it's all been either sold or given away or ripped off or whatever. So we were just like, let's just see what happens. We will still make music. And if there is a move that goes to a non-tangible product, which at the time was the download, then great. We don't have to spend time thinking about, right, who's, is the engineer available to get the metalhead, cut, blah, 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 all the stuff and the expense, of course. You would be spending £2,000 or £3,000 on your release before you'd even got it out the door.
Wait, let me clarify that. Listen to what Mr. Earnshaw said. You're already into almost £2,000 to £3,000.
Yeah, deficit.
Money. Yeah, you had to pay money.
Yeah.
I mean, real money, not pretend like we're on the internet, playing with Bitcoin. We're talking real money.
Actual money had to be passed from one party to another in order to eventually get that little box of vinyl, where you then stick it in your car and you drive into London and you go around to all the usual shops, your Uptown, your Black Market, City Sounds, all these places, and go, all right, guys, got boxes, and they would eat. Some of them would buy the box, 25 off you, maybe take 50, or they would go, well, we'll buy 25, we'll take another 50 on sale and return. Blah, blah, blah. So you were constantly managing, where money was and where stuff was happening and all this kind of stuff. So the download process, what we could see that was very likely going to happen, we were just like, this is going to make life a lot easier. This is going to make life so much easier.
Because we all said the same thing. Wow, this is going to make... But then we went.
And then...
It's on the journey. Go ahead.
But again, we were just very focused on the fact, well, we're making music. That's what we're going to do. So even if in 10 years' time we're selling music on bits of cheese, which essentially was effectively like the dairy version of the USB stick, it really didn't matter how things were going to get sold. The streaming thing, obviously the streaming model is extremely disruptive for certain areas of the music industry, not least the remuneration to the music makers, which we all know about the royalty rates and all that kind of stuff. But again, we try not to allow ourselves to become disillusioned by the negativity that is surrounding the streaming model. We use the streaming model to work for us as opposed to trying to fight against it. Yeah, of course, it would be nice to get more royalties, but you know what? Things have a habit of sorting themselves out. They just do. At the end of the day, it's been brilliant for the playlists, in terms of synchronization as well for certain things. Perhaps not with the house music, but with the other stuff that we're doing. If things are on the Spotify, it's very, very easy. You get it to those companies or the sync agents and states, all these, and it's become a tool for us. But I think that everything seems to be showing signs of coexisting a little bit easier. Streaming does what it does for the streaming. People still want to do the downloads. The vinyl thing has kicked off again, which is great because you've got people that are now seeking to actually own something, for the money they spend.
But here's the thing about the vinyl side. Is the vinyl side comparable to the way it was back in the day?
No, it's a completely different thing.
Can you tell people what the kind of numbers back in the day, when I say back in the day, if you go back in your spaceship 20 years back, what were the numbers on a good release moving? The amount of, should I say, quantity? How many pieces were we moving?
I mean, you'd be, if an established branded label with an established artist, you'd be shifting tens of thousands of units of vinyl.
You hear that, everyone?
It was. And
a record never heard radio. That was just the club scene.
That was just the clubs, yeah.
Right.
So I think, but you kind of the numbers are still there, as in not vinyl, but the people that want the music.
Sure, but they don't have it.
The thing that I'm quite intrigued with at the moment is obviously this sort of testing of the water with streaming music to the hardware into a cache and then using that in the clubs. So then it's effectively, you don't even have to pay for a download. I'm not sure about that at the moment. I'm certainly not going to poo-poo the idea as something that may happen down the road, because it would be professional suicide to not embrace the move in technology and how things are happening. So it's interesting, that one, because technology, internet, it's not reliable. There are certain things that I look at it and go, I'll let some other people try this one out first and see how it goes.
On the sidelines and wait to see how it starts. If it jumps off, then you'll implement your stuff and your business will go that direction. But in running it from 360 sense, the majors see it one way. They want a piece of everything now. They realize that there's not enough in just, what I'm talking about. They just don't have enough in just the actual record sales. For them, it's not enough. They want a piece of everything, merchandising, the whole deal, which lends us to our world, which is not of that grandeur, except only when we have records that cross over ground. And nowadays, a lot of those records are not doing it quite yet, because our sound is becoming more of the sound that people are sorting after. Because, as you know, many of them see EDM and all the electronic, the big raves and all that stuff is the big money. And that's what draws in the big dollars, okay? Ours has always been more the niche sense of it, where you had a good vinyl business that you didn't have to go run out and DJ every week. You can have a good living. But when that stopped, that changes. Saying that, you said something so important. You didn't have to make the financial investments and be into records with possibilities of losing your shirt, which happens a lot back then compared to now. Now you're doing more. You're doing the music and you're able to get it mass produced without having to use third parties. Are you happy with that? Because for me, as much as I embrace all the digital content, I still don't I'm not fond of it. I'd rather have the old setup sometimes. And it's not because I'm old, in a sense. I just like the idea of making constant money like that. It was nice to have the independent record labels cut big checks because they were making money. But when everybody's money train dried up, and the digital world became this. Now you can not only make the record, you can be the writer, producer, the remixer, the A&R person, the promotions person. It's like all you do all day is change your hats.
Yeah.
And the music side, it became less and less and less. You know what I'm saying, Richard? So it's tough. Even for guys like myself, we say, it's cool. I mean, I like this one-man band stuff, but at times I'm like, no, I'd rather have I'd rather go sit down with A&R people like we used to and laugh and play stuff. But I know it'll never come back. It's like the steam engine that's long gone. I get it. You know,
I think there's definitely some of my professional friends and acquaintances that either are artists or labels are definitely moving towards a more human connection with the process of making and distributing music, because we have all basically been glued to our laptops for some time now and think that's all I need. I've got my software, I've got my samples, I've got my login for the upload, and I've got my logins for my social media. So that's basically everything covered. Product, distribution, marketing, bosh, done. But it's an incredibly insular way of existing. Musicians in particular thrive off the energy of other musicians. You get in the studio and you play with your musician mates, and that has, I think, maybe the need to bring that back has actually been a positive side to what has happened throughout the pandemic, when everybody has been told, don't see anyone. And because we've all been stuck with a black mirror going, I don't need to see anybody because I've got this, da-da-da. But when they've realized that they've actually been told, you cannot see anyone, you're not allowed to hug your own family, you can't go to the pub, you can't go to the restaurant, you can't do this, you can't do that, da-da-da-da-da-da. And now as things are starting to unfold, I do get a feeling that people are like, I want to feel like those guys in that picture that I saw in Abbey Road in 1983 in the Studio 8. I want to feel like they look, that buzz, that energy of what's going on. I think there's definitely a lot of wiggle space to reintroduce to rehumanize the process of the music business. Personally, I may be talking bollocks, but somebody's going to say it, and I'm definitely like, if people want to come and get into the studio and be here, it's like even just attended mixdowns and things like that. Learn something, Don't send your pre-master to one of those online, we'll master it with our most incredible algorithms thing, because nobody's actually listening to it.
You mean Linda? Like, yeah. 10 quid, you can have your stuff sound as amazing as the guy from Bernie Grundman.
Nobody's actually listening to it. You learn so much. I learned so much by being in studios with people. I learned so much by, going to those record shops and trying to sell them my art, my work. I learned so much from speaking to promotions and marketing people, meeting them, making flyers, trying to get ads in DJ Mag and Mix Mag and iDJ and all this kind of stuff. There is so much to be learned there. In the same way that I can learn so much now from the people that know how to target their audience on social media, how they do this, how they do that, all these things that are now very much at the forefront of the way that we market music. If you'd show me all this stuff sort of 10, 15 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. No, it's not happening. Nah, just
get this out of my face now. Just like I told them when they asked me about playing CDs. I said never. Boy, I regret that as long as I live.
It's I think there's I think there's a lot to be learned from, because there's always the very public tit for tat, vinyl's better, this is better, that's better. And I'm just like, hey guys, do you know what? You can learn so much from each other, applying the older model to the new model and vice versa. And I think if there's this, a much more of a creative melting pot of information being shared among people, will make just the whole thing, there'll just be a greater energy, I think, a greater buzz across the board. It's like even things like ADE, for example. Now, we've been going for donkey's years. And I often get asked, is it worth going? And I'm like, well, if you want to actually see the actual face, smell the armpit of that email address that you've been getting for the last 5 years, then it's absolutely worth it. Because when you go there, they will come away from there. They're no longer an email address. They're an actual person. There's a lot to be said for getting out and amongst it. Supporting the artists that you like, going to the places where they're DJing. There's a lot to be said for thinking very, outside of your own securities and your own bubble, which is where we've all spent a lot of time for so long, because it's suddenly everything changed so quickly. It's like, I've got to take care of myself. I've got to look after my own thing now to try and keep that safe. And it's like, but just sort of squeeze out of it every now and again. It's support the new DJs, the new artists that are DJing. When we do our culture stuff, we get asked a lot, it'll be great to play. And we do, when we can, and the venue and the situation allows, we'll bring people in that are, may have never even been behind a pair of decks before in public, and there's been one or two that have gone on to do some great things. And it's lovely to see them flourish when all you did was just give them the opportunity to go, look, there's some technology. Take some time to wipe the sweat off your brow, shit yourself, whatever you need to do, but then just do what you do best and play some great music.
Mate, I love what you guys say. Do your worst.
So it's, I think everybody just needs to get out there and just,
Okay. So who gave you, and how did it begin for you with the turntables to the pioneer generation? What was that for you? Because we understand your musical background, but so where did the DJing start?
The DJing was just something that I enjoyed as essentially a bedroom hobby. I never, for a minute, not even a second, took it seriously as a career, path. And again, it was Brian Tappert. He was like, do you DJ? And I was like, yeah, I enjoy spinning everything out, but I've never played in public or anything like that. I just enjoy mixing some music. And he's like, bro, get it sorted, get out there. He said, you will see the world. You will experience some incredible stuff. The energy that you'll get from listening to music and being in venues and meeting all these people will only serve you positively with the music making process. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll give it a go. And,
so to say the truth, Brian's kind of mentored a little bit your journey.
He has massively. Yeah. Cause I had literally no idea what I was doing really until that point. I was just a bloke with big red hair, just playing the piano and putting some drums behind stuff. I could have been sort of rattling around like a sausage in a bucket for years.
Wait, they should have called you Simply Red too.
Yeah. So no, Brian, he played such a massive part, such a positive part right at the beginning. Because I think maybe he recognized that I didn't know what I was doing either, and just thought, I think there's perhaps this guy's got some talent. We need to just help him harness what's going on here and sort of get a feel for this environment that we're about to catapult him into.
Let's go back in time. So you've been in London shops around 88, 89. What's the first clubs you go to see this house thing? It's got to be first club. What'd you see?
I think probably the first club. We're going back to sort of early Ministry, Turnmills, those two in particular. I mean, I played at Turnmills a few times and it was such an amazing club. When I actually did play there, I was like, that's a definite bucket list thing for me. But truth be known, when I was at university, I was playing rugby and I was too drunk to go anywhere.
That's fine.
I was a slow starter. Let's put it that way. But it's, I would never, I wouldn't change a thing if I'm honest. The whole, I started DJing when I was 3 years old, and it's blah blah, and I'm like, brilliant. Well, do you know what? When I was 1, I probably did this on the piano. Does that mean I started playing piano when I was 1?
You tinkered with the.
I tinkered. Yeah, I think it's just a wonderful organic growth, I think, that I've experienced, because there was no, I think the most part of the lack of social media was a great thing, because there was no pressure on me by seeing how quickly other people were achieving what they were hoping to achieve. I was literally just in a room with some synths, an old Atari ST, and I was just making music for the love of making music. My motivation was to basically hold a DAT tape at the end of it and go, there it is. Now what? That was the goal.
So let's just say in a perfect world that didn't go that direction, what career would you have gone into if you weren't going to go into the music, if the music didn't turn on? Because we were all in that time. I remember saying, if this doesn't work, I got to go here. What were you thinking you were going to do?
I'm a stubborn old git.
Okay.
It was never not going to work.
Okay.
It was going to work one way or the other.
Regardless.
The music thing was going to happen. If I had not started to develop my sound, and be a producer of music, I probably would have sought employment at a studio in London. Psalm West was big place at the time, Air Studios, and just gone in as a tape op. I don't care if I have to make tea, whatever it is. I'm just going to learn. I'm going to just absorb everything that I'm around, and then maybe have gone down just purely the sound engineering route. Or maybe that would have then sort of developed into mastering. I don't know. Who knows? But I was not going to not achieve or succeed something within music. It's the only thing I know how to do, if I'm honest. I was crap at everything else at school.
What do you mean you were crap?
Pretty decent at sport, but music was really the only thing that I was naturally able to do and go, actually, I'm fine. I'm all right at this. Everything else was hard. Everything else was, very tricky.
Was real work.
It was real work.
Music is not. Let me clarify to everybody at home, everyone. When I say music is not work or work, when you love what you do, and he'll tell you the same, it's never work. You just love what you do. It's a career. But when you got to go punch a clock for somebody and do something you hate, that's a whole other story.
It's a whole other story. And I think as well, on that, when people, sort of, they'll message you on Facebook, whatever, and go, you're living the dream. And you go, let me just explain this timeline.
Go ahead.
30 years, the last few years has been pretty dreamy, but the 20 before that was some of the most difficult, most challenging years in the history of all challenging years. When you're trying to make ends meet, and the door goes and you think, who's that? Is that a debt collector because I haven't paid my tax thing? Or, and you're trying to shut all that out whilst focusing on trying to get this music thing working.
Right.
We could go on for hours on, what happened before the visible Richard Earnshaw thing happened in terms of.
Oh, then sum it up for Richard. Sum it up for us, because people need to know the realness of it, and that's what makes this show True House Stories.
Let's choose something simple like food, for example.
There you go.
Yeah, now I can shop in the farm shops and buy organic stuff. I can go to Goodwood and get my meat. I can go because I love cooking.
Okay.
I can buy the highest quality of ingredients and make great food that I can then feed my family with. But when I was starting out, sometimes I wouldn't be able to eat the whole day. I'll go literally the whole day without eating because I couldn't afford to buy any food that day. And then the next day I might think, I'm really lucky. I've got some baked beans. I'll have that with a bit of toast, or I've got some noodles or something, which is, and that's all I could afford.
Uni food, as they call it.
Yeah, proper uni food. But still, there's that sort of that focus. Like, this is just temporary.
the water. He put the water with the rum and put the top on, let it get warm, and then eat and feel full and get back in the studio again.
Exactly. You know, you would do whatever you could just to scrape by. With that focus of like, it's only temporary. We're gonna be okay eventually. And then you have those, you know, you need a little bit of luck along the way. You know, that little opportunity that perhaps you weren't looking for, but it's like, oh, hello, that's interesting. Let's go with that. You know, and you know, the success is like you might get that opportunity to do that one remix, and they offer to pay you basically in food vouchers. You know, it's like, we'll give you a few quid just so you can feed yourself, and you do that remix. But that just happens to be the remix that blows everything that you've ever done out of the water. And you go, that's the one. That's the moment I can go back to. That is the foundation, you know, the real solid foundation. Like for Richard Earnshaw, People Are People was that foundation. It was that record that then I built from that, because it was such a successful record, which even to this day blows my mind, how something so simple, just a groove with some guitars and a vibe, was, you know, caught on. But it was the thing that I had that allowed me to then go, right, this is it. This is the foundation now. You know, the size of the house, literally, that I build on top of this foundation can be anything that I want it to be now, because that is solid.
And that pretty much wraps that up. And that's awesome, because people don't really get it. That sacrifice that you made. You made sacrifices in order to make it in this game. You know?
Totally. But everyone makes sacrifices one way or the other.
Nah. Some people take what I call the easy way out. They go work for the man. They complain their whole lives till they retire. I have friends like that who have complained every day. I hate my job. I hate my life. I hate my wife. I hate this. And they don't ever see anything good of what they contribute out of it. Children are doing, they're healthy. They take everything for granted because they didn't have the knack or the, you know, or the muster to step out of that comfort and go the direction you were talking about. Chance. Because that everybody makes it, brother. You know that. Like you said, the magic word, luck.
And also, as much as a bit of luck, I think, you know, life experiences. I lost my dad when I was 25. So it was in 2000. So literally the year that I made the People Are People record. And you can, obviously, grief has it kind of manifests itself in very, very different ways, which still to this day, you know, is a very difficult thing to kind of process and sort of cope with. But at the time, I was like, I have to somehow harness something positive out of this unbelievably horrible experience. And it was in the most part, it wasn't necessarily, I'm going to make a record and it's going to be really big. It was more of that is a stark reminder that there is only one life. We don't get a second chance to just kind of go, well, I messed that up, I'll do it again. You've got one opportunity. And I thought, you know what? Whatever it is that happens from here on out, when it's my turn, when I get down to the end of the road and I look back at the road that I've just been up, I can go, do you know what? That was the fucking best ride ever. And that's me. I'm signing out. That's it. I'm done. And that was the thing for me. I realized it's like, I don't want to plan for retirement and then, you know, just basically wait away in beige flippers and just go, oh, that's great, isn't it? You know, we'll work for our retirement. Let's enjoy our lives now. You know, I was like, no, enjoyment starts now and continues for the entire period, whatever that length of period is. And that was the thing that I got from it. So again, that ties in with the whole, I'm not going to let this not work, because I knew that it would make me really happy. And then if it made me really happy, then it would make the people around me really happy, because happy is so contagious. You know, when people are happy and they're positive and they've got a real energy, it is so contagious. And people around you go, oh, fuck me, he's well happy. I should be happy as well. Why are you so happy? It's like, well, do you know what? It's quite an easy thing to achieve. You just got to da-da-da-da-da-da. And they go, light bulb, bing, you know. And then it's just, so it's like spread more of that stuff around and just lots more people will be much happier. But for me, it came out of a very traumatic experience.
Yeah, right.
You know,
sometimes it was darkness. I always say sometimes a dark moment will have light come out of it as much as it's dark. It's crazy.
Well, it's for some, it's quite hard to see it, and I totally understand how some people need other people to help them find that path out of it. But for me, it was almost like a reaction as opposed to a response. I normally respond to things in life. You know, I take time to process stuff and then I respond to it. But that was definitely a reaction. That was like, right, shit. I want to make sure that I don't regret. You know, there are no regrets. You know, I only regret I have.
Were you devastated when your dad died, or was it just a knockback for you?
Oh, it was beyond devastation. I mean, it was. You know, as the eldest son, a guy who I admired and looked up to, and sort of subliminally wanted to show that I could make it in the thing that I was doing. And just at that point where you've come out of the real mess of the floor and you're starting to make things work and think, oh, you know, you want to make your parents proud. And then just as you get to the point where you think, it's happening, and then it's like, gone. And suddenly you're just like, wow, now what? What am I going to do now? And so I think that's where the reaction to go, well, I know that somewhere up there he's having a beer at the bar with a big man and he's proud of what I'm doing, but I never got the chance for him to tell me or to show him. And so it's my job now to be proud of my own achievements and to then show my own children one day that, to give them the same encouragement and to be, and as a parent as well, it affected me. It made me realize, like, I could be just out on my mountain bike one day and I could just hit a massive gap jump, crash into a tree and break my neck.
Yeah,
that's not a cool way to go. Well, actually, if there's going to be a way to go, that's probably quite a cool way to go. But it's you doing what I do as a job now means that I am always here when I'm not. One of the things about the pandemic, to spend so much time with them and to help them through and be there, every minute of every hour of the day. I wasn't traveling off somewhere and DJing. I was at home. Daddy was at home all the time. And hopefully when they get to their late teens, early 20s, and they decide that they want to move out into the world, they will then look back with a positive retrospect and go, do you know what? There was so much about that period that I now understand is so beneficial. They might not understand it now because all they care about is food in their faces, a nice clean bed, can they play with their mate?
Sure, it's the simple things.
So it's all of this stuff. It's just the whole life experience. That's what comes out in the music as well. It's to be inspired to write about certain things and express your experiences is all about that.
You're right. Now, here's the thing about your kids, comparing to how you grew up. Okay, do you see the difference in our generations that we were thinking about occupation, working towards the goal? We were kind of, there was treatments involved with us. A lot of us, like our families would say, you got to be a lawyer. In your case, mom and dad are both musically background. So they were saying, piano this, get your stuff there. Do you see the kids seeing it the same way like we were seeing it back then? Or do you see them kind of like, because of the now thing and everything is now in their face, YouTube. Everything is, you can be like this with not pushing a weight. Do you see that? Do they understand what it really takes to work to become the way you became?
I think that it's fair to say that, that the kids nowadays definitely have a much more eclectic range of aspirations. When I was 12, 13 years old, there was never any chance of me saying, I want to be a YouTuber or I want to be an influencer. There's such a crazy and diverse level of stuff out there for them to potentially be able to do. But my boys are, they're 8 and 11. So, they're playing their sports. It's sports. They're loving their sports. Both of them are having piano lessons. And they are both very gifted little musicians. In particular, Harry, being a bit older, he's able to listen. He plays by ear. So he'll listen to something. So he'll listen to some Coldplay, for example. And then he'll sit at the piano and you'll go, is this how it goes? I'm like,
don't you love that? Don't you just love that? You have to do it. He just hears and goes, boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh.
It's incredible. It's incredible to see. Of course they moan about it, both of them. It's like, oh, piano. Blah. I'm like, look, I don't mind you having a bit of time on Fortnite or doing this or doing that. All I'm asking you is to do a little bit something for me as well, and explaining to them the benefits of learning a music instrument aren't about being able to play the musical instrument. It's about the process of how you get to the point where you can play it, the amount of effort, the determination, the time, everything that goes in to be able to, you put your fingers on a piano for the first time and it's like, I'm never, ever going to be able to play like Daddy can play. And I'm like, yes, you can. It's just, you've got to be patient and work at it. And then when you realize that you can play like I can play, and you understand how much work has gone into achieving that level of ability, you will then understand that if you perhaps want to seek a profession as a professional athlete, for example, you will be able to realize how much dedication it takes to get to that level. It transcribes across all disciplines as far as I'm concerned. It's because when you do get to a certain point, not only can you, but others too, can then enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Very true.
And that's a real light bulb moment for people, I think, especially with children. They really love what I'm doing. So if they want to go off and do something else, they might just remember, I had to work really, really hard at the piano for a few months or a couple of years, whatever, to get to this point. So potentially it might take me the same amount of time to be really good as a horse rider, or it might take me that much time to be really good at riding a unicycle or whatever it is, all these things. It's the process of effort and time, patience and achievability, and then ultimately results.
Well, I will say this, if I remember correctly, and they did studies on the piano, people who studied a musical instrument, especially piano, they said it helped with mathematician work, problem solving, because you use a different part of the front lobe that you normally don't use, because you learn how to read advanced. As you're reading advanced, then you're playing. So you're reading advanced and you're playing. So you're problem solving on the spot, when you're doing sight reading, as you're learning this. And as the better you get, the better your conceptual vision is to picking up on things. It just broadens you. So it helps you like pushing those weights or riding a bike. The more you do it, the more stronger you get, the better shape you get. It's just like anything in life. And of course, but with you, it's been very beneficial to have that piano training, as we see. And you sound like your parents now with your kids. You do this for me. And it's fun. You sound just like them now. You want it repeating it without realizing it, because you're doing it because you know it's the right thing. It's crazy.
I find myself, often thinking to myself, God, I sound like my dad.
Just like them.
Or I sound like my mum. And you think, well, do you know what? They did a pretty good job. So, I can only just pass on, what I've learned from them and from everyone and every person I meet. It's one of one of the beautiful things about DJing is that I've had the privilege to travel the world and meet some incredible people, made some friends, experienced some amazing things, you know, and it all is on the big sponge, absorb it all, mostly in the hair. And I use that as a means to inspire myself when I'm in this room. Just sort of might just turn on the JX8P and just, you know, faff around with that for a little bit.
Jam out. But here's a couple of questions I want you to clarify to some people. The DAW you use, okay? When you're playing the writing production guy, all right, and then the mixer, how do you separate yourself to become the mastering guy? To be able to master your own stuff, or do you master your own stuff? You know,
I treat all three processes very, very separately. So when I'm making the music, it's perhaps, you know, a bit more frantic, and I'm enjoying the tactile nature of, you know, playing all this business here, and, you know, I've got some more over there as well.
Look at that, everybody! Look at his room.
And it's all just
programmer's heaven.
It's just all getting involved with everything and literally feeling the instruments as you're playing them. And then I get to the mixing side, which I'll probably do. I'll leave space, and then when I get to the mixing side, it's definitely specs on. You know, I'm there just like, I'm just going to work on this clap for a few days and make sure that it's all right. You know, and there's just a whole different part of my brain just switches into gear. And in the same way, when I'm happy with where I've got it to, and I'm like, right, I think this is ready to go to master, I'll leave it for a day or two. And even if I get to final mix within Logic, which is what I use, sometimes I might mix into Pro Tools, but more often than not, I'm quite happy with the results that I've got in Logic. But I always master in Pro Tools, purely because visually I'm looking at a different environment, and that helps my brain think differently about what I'm doing technically with the audio that I've got. So it's just, again, it's taking the time. You know, if anybody says I started in the morning, I made a record, I mixed it and I mastered it, I'm just like, brilliant, nice one. I bet it sounds great.
It sounds fabulous.
Yeah. You know, 'cause I think that it's
sorry, you know, for
that. you've got to just take the time. You know, enjoy making music. It's not a rush. It's not a race at all. You know, it's you get so much more out of it when you put so much into it, and you're literally draining out your emotions and your experiences into the equipment, and it spits it all back at you. And when you can listen to that and just go, oh, that just feels and sounds exactly how I wanted it to.
And that's what I say. And there you have it right there. You just say, that's it in a nutshell. Who do you send your stuff to when you need that, you know, someone to be bipartisan, but yet be real with you and not be fanny, you know, in that sense of, oh, we love everything you do. No. Richard, this is not cutting it, brother.
Well, my business partner.
I have my friends that tell me straight up, they're like, nah, hated it. Go ahead.
Well, Dan will always listen to stuff very objectively. He's my business partner since day dot. And then there's Mark Bamford, who I do all the Spirit Chaser stuff with. So there's two of us there. So we're constantly bouncing ideas. And, you know, very often if I get caught up with something, Mark will just sort of tap me on the shoulder and just go, fucking just get on with it, will you? It's boring me now. Let's just crack on with the next thing. And you go, okay, done, line drawn, off you go.
Right.
So, you know, and there's so many people that I will always bounce things off. You know, if there's like a demo mix that I feel is good enough to be played out, might give it to a couple of people and say, look, it's just a little something. It's not finished yet, but just give it a bounce when you're playing at the weekend and see how it sounds. And then, you know, giving feedback, a bit like you might have done all those years ago, and you think, oh, is this ready to commit all that money to just yet? I tell you what, I'm just going to get a dub plate done. I'm going to give it to so-and-so, play it out, see how it goes. You know, you're only going to get 8, 9, 10 plays out of a dub plate at best at top quality. So it's not like they're going to run off with it and suddenly manufacture loads of it, because you could tell immediately if it has been. So it's important to have, you know, a sounding board or 3 sort of close by, definitely.
Let me shoot this at you. You dealt with A&R people. Was there ever a moment where you were right and they were wrong? Where you knew the record felt right, and they says, it's missing this, or whatever their comments were. And then you gave it to a DJ, and the DJ starts playing the record blows up. And the same A&R person says, I don't remember hearing that. But
it's almost like somebody's told you this story. So the version of People Are People that became the version. Now, the lesser known and lesser played flip side of the record, which was called a dub, even though really it was all dubby anyway, because there was very little vocal. I sent that in an earlier version of itself to a label. It's called Peppermint Jam. And the feedback was very, very good, but it's not right. I was like, cool, because we'd done the work with the Bosch de Lugos thing with Peppermint Jam. See, so initially I was like, well, you know, they're going to know who I am, so I'll send them this idea. And so with you know, the feedback, yeah, it's cool, but you know, it's not really for us. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then the version of People Are People that became the version was actually 2 different tracks. So there was a track that I was working on with Dave Morell on the guitar, which was, I remember it was entitled Latin Dave. That's basically the working title, was Latin Dave. And then this flip side with the vocal on it. And I was sitting in the studio one day and I was like, I can't finish either of these tracks. I know what I'll do. I'll pitch all the guitars up a semitone because they're in different keys. And bearing in mind, in 2000, 2001, this was a really sketchy thing to be doing because, you know, the tech didn't allow things to happen just like that. And then I blended the 2 tracks together, and that became the main mix of People Are People. And for some reason, I instinctively sent it to Brian because the new version I thought was a little bit more sulfuric than it was anything else. And then it got picked up by Soulfuric, and then it went out and it did very well. And then it was the old awkward phone call from Peppermint Jam. Not, I might add, who you think was on the phone call. It was an A&R person who had a massive go at me, basically, for signing the record.
How'd it go with you?
Yeah, and I was like, well, you know.
Wait, let's reenact the conversation. So the phone rings from Europe, from Germany.
They were just like, oh, I can't believe you signed it. I was like, well, I sent it to you and you weren't interested. So, you know, it's all cool. You know, got plenty of stuff on the go. It was almost like you know, like they missed out on something. But it happens all the time. You know, it happens all the time with A&R. You know, you turn something down. We've done it ourselves. You know, you listen to something, you think, oh, I'm not really sure about this. And then it goes out on another label, and then it does really well. And you think, oh, balls. But, you know, you can't cry over spilt milk. You just got to go, maybe I just was in a bad mood that day and wasn't feeling it.
Yes.
You know, yeah, the A&R thing is, I mean, there's very few people actually A&Ring anymore in the sort of the old school sense of the word. But, you know, I love a good banter with an A&R person. It's great. You know, it's part of the
Process in the sense, in the process.
Totally. But no, it wasn't a massive drama at all. That particular, it certainly wasn't. I sent a finished version to a label, and then they turned it down. Then I put it out somewhere else, and it became a worldwide hit. I don't have any sort of sensational stories of that nature, but it was certainly an eye opener for me. Just what happens behind the scenes, behind the vinyl, the product on the shelf. What happens behind all that? Who's all these people sitting in offices and, many of them just trying to legitimize their position in a company as best as they can, which was, I'm an A&R person for so-and-so label. Oh, are you? Yeah. Oh, are you really an A&R person for that label? Well, yeah, just a bit of just helping out every now and again. You just think, so basically, you're a bloke that knows a bloke but knows another bloke. Are you on their payroll? No.
No. I'm a junior A&R in training.
And I was just like, just tell me what you are from the get-go. I don't judge anyone. And it was all this. I was 20. In my early 20s, just sort of experiencing all of this thing unfolding in front of me. A whole new world that I had no experience in whatsoever. It was brilliant. It was such an adventure. Well, it's still an adventure because, the evolution of the fabric of the scene is constantly on the shift in one way or another.
Sure. Oh, well, give us...
That's like the awkward silence. Where do we go now?
Yeah. Well, that's where do you go now from here? That's the problem with this whole game now. It's... People, you have to understand something. We're talking about the old setup. Nowadays, if people looking to pick up records, they look at algorithms.
Mm.
It's crazy. They look at how the record's reacting with digital downloads and streaming. So there's really no physical people leading you sometimes to make better records.
Mm.
That's what I found with really the good A&R people.
Yeah.
They had to pull out the best in us.
That was their job. That was their job to recognize something in a product and go, we're going to work with you on this one. But, there's far too much of if it's not ready to go and it suits, we're not interested. Even if there's something in a record, you think, there's something in this. Let's work with these people. Let's really sort of figure out how this is going to play out. But then
you have that in you. You have that in you because you are, you have musicality, you have the understanding of our business, and you can see raw talent. You can hear it. You're not deaf. You can hear good talent.
Well, it's, we try to, I suppose because we're of a pre sort of social media streaming generation, and we've seen the pros and cons of how the environment within is changing. There are still values that we hold very dear from the old ways, which we still try to kind of encourage people. Like, again, I've said it a few times, but take your time, be patient with the music. If you love the music, it will love you back in the long term. If all you want to do is just chuck stuff out there, I've had emails from people, I've heard your Spirit Chaser things did really well, blah, blah, blah. I've just realized that you have guest records. I've done this track. I think you'll be the perfect home for this record because I just want to get a top 10 beat port so I can get some gigs. And I'm just like, dude, I really admire your enthusiasm, but we're not in the business of trying to accelerate people as quickly as possible to this level of whatever it is they're asking for, because a lot of the time you don't even know if the record you've got is going to achieve that thing. We've had huge successes with records in various territories, which we never anticipated would ever happen. mainstream crossover stuff with house music or soulful deep house, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And it kicked off massively, and you think, how the fuck did that happen? I don't know. Did we pay someone for this to work? Or did it just happen? Was it just a thing? A radio guy played it, and then another radio guy went, hey, this is cool, I like this. And then before you know it, all of the radio guys are playing it. And then it gets onto A-list, and then suddenly whoosh, so-and-so wants it for adverts, and then, it almost is like a snowball effect.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
You just don't know. Still to this day, we don't really know how these things happen. Other than what we can say is that every single crop beat, every semi-quaver of the process of making that record was something that we enjoyed and something that we really proud of and something that we took time to do. And the rest of it is like, well, that's, again, a bit of luck here and there and a little bit of push and a little bit of that and a bit of this. But, we've always maintained a pride in the product itself, whether it streams to my mum in a living room or to 1 million people or 10 million people. It's still the same thing. Sure. I'm going to change the perspective a little bit because my computer's just said, if you don't plug me in, I'm going to run out. So I'm just going to go here now.
We're almost at that point where we're going to wrap up, but your insight is very helpful to many people that maybe don't really get and understand what it takes to do all this stuff. There's a lot involved. And, I try to tell everyone there's an adage, you're as good as your last record. Meaning, try your best, always. Put your best foot forward because you just never know what's going to lock in these days, or ever, for that matter. No. So you just don't know. You don't. People said, did you really know? Sometimes you have a gut feeling, but you're not 100% sure. We're all feeling this is a big one. We're working on it. This is great. And then sometimes something you don't have the same feelings for, but you're putting in the time and effort into it. You say to yourself, it's pretty good. It's not my best work. And that becomes the de facto record.
Yeah.
The platinum selling record of all time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sort of the creative process surrounding People was, I always look back and just thought, isn't it funny that one record that really became my base, my foundation record, started off as two different records, which I couldn't finish either of them for some reason. And then I just thought, well, let's just put the two together and see what happens. And then bang, away you go. And then you can put in so much time and effort into a track and you think, I've got a really good feeling about this one. Right. And then it gets released and it's like tumbleweed. You just think, well, it doesn't matter because I really enjoyed it.
I was just going to ask you the next thing. How do you deal with this way streaming moves so fast with titles coming in and out of the charts and everything? How do you feel about all that? I mean,
I don't really have a particular feeling about it. It's here to stay, certainly for the foreseeable future. I see, my eldest and his friends, they're using streaming to consume music.
Right.
I use it myself. And it is a brilliant platform to discover music that perhaps you would never have looked at before, because it would have involved going into the shop, speaking to someone that knew something about the music they were selling, and then having to buy a piece of vinyl or a CD. And if you didn't like what you heard, then if you were lucky, you might be able to get a refund. But very often you just end up with this thing you've spent money on and you don't like it.
Right.
I think that as a consumer, using streaming is an incredibly enriching experience. I think that's, as a music maker, I have to always keep that in the forefront, to know that my fan base has grown, 100-fold, if not more, because of streaming, because people are discovering music that I've made or I've collaborated with because they've been listening to something else, and the algorithm pops up and goes, "Oh, you might like Richard Earnshaw," and they probably go, "Who's this bloke?" Stick play and go, "Wow, I never would have looked for this guy." And then, so they're listening to my music, and they're listening to me. Essentially, they're listening to a story that I've got to tell, and it's a wonderful thing to know that people are able to enjoy the time and the effort that you put into music that otherwise would never have even given you a second thought. That's good for them, and it's good for me.
No, it's great.
The whole argument of, to say, which we touched on earlier on about, royalty rates and all that kind of stuff. Well, it just is what it is for a moment. Either run with it, make it work for you, or just get upset by it.
Don't be angry.
Don't be angry. Just don't get angry about it. Just get on with making music. I mean, if somebody loves your music and your fan base, and you've worked hard to grow your fan base, they will listen to your music. They might listen to a single track on rotation hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. It's, and if you've got, 100,000 or 200,000 people or 1 million people or whatever it is, all doing that, and they are connecting with your expressions, they're connecting with what you've got to say about music, then I think that's just a brilliant thing all round, quite frankly. And it allows the portability of these experiences. People can go off with their smartphones now, literally, and sit in a desert and listen to your music.
Right. As long as you have it.
So, for example, I had a message from a British Army soldier 2 or 3 years ago now, and he messaged me on Facebook. He said, "I've just got back from my second tour of Afghanistan."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I just want to let you know that having your music, on his phone, played a massive part in helping him keep his shit together whilst he's in the middle of a desert getting shot at." And you just think to yourself, well, that's a pretty amazing thing. So for that alone, thanks to technology, his time could have been very different if it wasn't for technology.
Sure.
So I think, like you say, you can't get angry about this stuff. Yeah, sure, we can all talk about 0.000 whatever percent of this, that, and the other. It's like, the picture's bigger than that. Yeah, of course, we all need to make a living, but there are ways that you can make a living outside of the Spotify argument.
I'll tell you how I do it. I get my squeeze box out with my monkey. Monkey. And all kidding aside, you have to just move with the times.
You do.
Like the guy who made the steam engine. I always use that. It won't work. It just doesn't work. That's not what people want anymore. You have to move. And it's a constantly changing world now. Technology is moving at a speed of light that it's just, as you get to know this technology, they're on to something else. You just got to make it work for you.
I think that's the key.
Forward. Where are you going with everything now? COVID's going to talk to us.
Well, one of the things that I've taken from this sort of, this drought of DJing over the last year or so, is that it's really helped me rethink how I'm making music. So to summarize as quickly as possible, man makes record, man makes, a record that becomes really, really popular. And that same man then has 20 years of making music and DJing all over the world and really enjoys himself and has a nice time. And then pandemic comes along, and then I've got all these records, and I'm thinking, oh, fuck, these there aren't any dance floors now, and now the music's not working.
Right.
And I was like, I never used to feel like this. What happened? And I realized that the distraction of performing the records was kind of hampering my creative flow a little bit. I didn't want to become a make music by numbers producer, but it kind of felt a little bit like that. So I was like, right, okay, well, I can't go out and DJ and play this music to a crowd of people, whether it's a bar or a massive club, whatever. So I'm now going to just make music like I used to when I was 15. So 0 fucks, music on, bosh. The arrangements started to sound so much more silky. Everything was really starting to flow. And I was like, oh, so it's been a really creative period the last few weeks. New Spirit Chaser album is nearly finished. I can't wait for people to hear how we've really twisted the concept of what a deep house act stroke album can sound like. I've got a number of collaborations on the bubble. I've got 2 albums I'm working on. One of them is kind of like a mini LP, more like an extended EP in a way. There's only 7 tracks on it. Okay. But that's going to be very interesting because that's literally where I've thrown all my conventional Earnshaw straight out the window and gone back to that period where I really didn't care what music I was making. There's a consistency in composition and there's a consistency in sound. But this particular project has house. It has screwed up time signature breakbeat stuff. It's got drum and bass on it. So I'm really, really excited to see what the reaction to that will be. Wow. But I'm going to soften the blow with potentially people going, what? With a more conventional Richard Earnshaw album, which will filter in next year. So yeah, there's loads of exciting stuff going on. This new thing, this inner spirit sort of alter ego thing that I've got going on, which is like deep Afro, soulful, whatever. Working on a load of that stuff. Obviously, Addicted is out at the moment, and it's been doing really, really well. But yeah, I'm just enjoying the music making process in a very, very different way at the moment, and I think it's for the better. If I'm honest,
that's good.
It really is. It's like in a way, I'm making the version I want to make first. And then I will think about how I'm going to rearrange that to work on the dance floor.
Right.
Whereas when you're DJing all the time, you tend to work with the dance floor version first and then go, how am I going to get this to work on Spotify? It's actually more difficult that way round, I've discovered. For me, anyway. I find it a lot easier now the other way around.
Yep.
So it's, good times, lots of music to come, busy, just looking forward to getting back out onto the dance floors as soon as it's possible, really.
Any gigs yet locked in? Do you have anything starting yet, or people starting to talk to you?
There are conversations. I'm playing on Friday. No, I'm not. Saturday. Apologies. I'm playing in London for a place at the Gallery.
Okay.
Which is it's a bar, restaurant, brunch kind of vibe. So it's going to be very, very slick, really nice. Then next weekend, Friday, we're doing our first Eye Culture in London.
Wow.
At the W Hotel in West End. So drop into the socials on the usual platforms to get the details if you're up for that. Then Saturday, I'm playing with Mudina at a place down in Plymouth. And then on the Sunday, we're doing the same venue, but a Spirit Chaser, myself and Mark. So it's a long weekend next weekend. But
because it's a bank holiday weekend.
It is the bank holiday weekend, but it's just really nice to see the venues, the promoters, and the DJs, and the punters feeling more confident about getting involved. And I'm really hoping that everything goes really smoothly, and people are because it's going to be tricky. Some people have not been able to go out for over a year. And that can be quite a prospect to throw yourself back into the lion's den socially. So it's, in a way, I suppose it's quite a good thing that the bars and the pubs are able to open first, and just no one wants to go straight into 6th gear. So
I do.
Well,
I'm joking. Of course, I'm ready. Hello.
Everyone's ready. I think everyone's ready. I think we just got to, I think everybody literally has. Everyone's done so well.
Tired of this camera shit already, everybody. I want to see real people and people
definitely.
like Richard again, because
we're allowed to hug now. We can hug people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's going to be so much hugging going on, honestly.
This is what I try to explain to everybody. In this music thing,